The madness that saved us. Not behind closed doors, no, that would have required shame. They said it to her face, in the market, at church, while she stood right there. Mom and Kiru the mad woman. Children threw stones. Adults crossed the street. And me? I pretended not to know her. I was 22 years old before I learned the truth. Before I understood that my mother wasn't broken by madness, she was protected by it. Let me take you back. Growing up in our neighborhood in Port Harcourt was a masterclass in humiliation. My mother would wake up at 3 a.m. and scream at invisible enemies in our compound. She'd curse people who weren't there, throw things at shadows, weep over tragedies only she could see. The neighbors watched. They whispered. They pitied me. School was worse. Parent-teacher conferences became public spectacles when Mom and Kiru would arrive wearing mismatched clothes, muttering under her breath, her eyes wild and unfocused. Once, she stood up during my primary school graduation and began shouting about the children who never got to grow up. Security escorted her out while 200 people stared. I stopped bringing friends home by age 10. Stopped talking about my family by 12. By 15, I'd perfected the art of becoming invisible, anything to avoid being the girl with the crazy mother. I didn't love her. I couldn't. How do you love someone who's systematically destroying your life? The breaking point came on a scorching Saturday afternoon at Iquare Road Market. I was 15, helping Mom and Kiru buy vegetables, praying she'd act normal for just 1 hour. She didn't. In the middle of the crowded market, she suddenly grabbed the trader's arm and started screaming, "Where did you bury them? Where are the children?" The woman yanked away, cursing. Vendors started shouting. A crowd formed. Someone called her a witch. Someone else suggested she needed deliverance. I ran. Just left her there and ran all the way home, tears of rage burning my face. I packed a bag that night. I was going to my aunt's house in Lagos and never coming back. But as I zipped up my backpack, I heard her voice from the other room, soft, broken, completely different from the wild woman at the market. "I know you hate me, Amara. But one day you'll understand. One day you'll know I did this for you." Something in her voice stopped me. Not the words themselves, but the clarity. The sanity. For just a moment, she didn't sound crazy at all. I didn't leave that night. But the seed was planted. I started watching her differently. Noticing things. Like how her episodes always happened in public, never when we were completely alone. Like how her eyes, even in her wildest moments, tracked everything, watching, calculating. One day while she was out, I broke into the room she always kept locked. What I found changed everything. Hospital files from 20 years ago. Newspaper clippings about a scandal involving a prominent chief. Letters written in my mother's handwriting, elegant, educated, nothing like the scrawls she produced now. And a dress, small and white, stained with something brown that might have been blood. At the bottom of a metal box, I found a photograph. My mother, maybe 25 years old, standing next to a man in front of a beautiful house. She was radiant, her smile brilliant, her hand resting on a very pregnant belly. She looked like someone with a future. Someone with hope. The man had his face scratched out of the photo. Violently. Repeatedly. I spun around. Mom and Kiru stood in the doorway, but she wasn't raging. She was terrified. "Mama, who is this? What happened to you?" She collapsed against the doorframe, 20 years of secrets breaking across her face like a dam finally giving way. "The day you were born," she whispered, "was the day I learned what evil really looks like." What my mother told me that day shattered my entire understanding of reality. 23 years ago, she was Nkiru Okafor University graduate, a banker's wife, pregnant with twins. They were happy, successful, deeply in love. Her husband's business partner was Chief Okari, a man with political ambitions and traditional beliefs. When he learned Nkiru was carrying twins, he became obsessed. He believed that sacrificing newborn twins would guarantee his political success. It sounded insane, like something from a dark Nollywood film. But when my mother went into labor 2 months early, complications arose. She was rushed to a private hospital, one owned by Chief Okari's family. My father was away on business. She gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The nurses took both babies away for routine examination. Hours passed. My mother, weak and bleeding, kept asking for her children. They brought her only one baby. Me. The boy didn't make it, they said. Complications from premature birth. But my mother heard him crying in another room. She saw a nurse carrying a blue bundle out a back door. When she tried to get up, to fight, to scream, they sedated her. Heavily. When she woke up, my father was there, grief-stricken over the son he'd never met. They showed him a death certificate. A tiny coffin. They buried it with full ceremony. But my mother knew. She knew what she'd heard. She knew her son was alive. She confronted the nurses. They denied everything. She went to the police. They dismissed her as a grieving woman losing her mind. She hired a lawyer. The lawyer disappeared. Then Chief Okari came to visit her at home. He sat in her living room, drank her tea, and said quietly, "Your son is alive and well. He's being raised by a good family who can't have children. They love him. If you ever speak of this again, if you ever cause trouble, both your children will disappear. Do you understand?" My father walked in during this conversation. Chief Akari simply smiled and changed the subject to business. When my mother tried to tell my father what Akari had said, my father, trusting his business partner completely, suggested she needed psychiatric help. Her grief was making her paranoid. "So I went mad," my mother told me, her eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. Or rather, I pretended to. It was the only way to survive. As long as everyone believed she was crazy, Chief Akari didn't see her as a threat. She could scream his secrets in the market, and people would just shake their heads at the mad woman. She could keep evidence, and no one would search her house because why investigate a lunatic? Her madness was armor, camouflage, protection. Every time I saw him on television, getting richer, more powerful, I wanted to die, she said. But I had you. And somewhere out there, I had a son who didn't even know I existed. I couldn't abandon either of you. My father left 5 years later, unable to cope with his wife's deterioration. He remarried, started a new family, forgot us both. And my mother stayed crazy, year after year, watching the man who stole her child rise to become one of the most powerful politicians in the state. "You ruined your entire life," I whispered. "For me, no, baby." She touched my face. "I saved it." Finding him took 3 weeks of obsessive searching. Social media, school records, a name on an old adoption document my mother had stolen years ago. Chidi Okonkwo, 22 years old, engineering student, loved basketball, looked exactly like the father I barely remembered. He had no idea he was adopted. I created a fake profile and studied him from a distance, trying to find the courage to destroy his entire world with the truth. How do you tell someone that everything they believe about their identity is a lie? Before I could decide, something else happened. Chief Akari announced he was running for governor. The campaign rally was in our neighborhood. My mother saw his face on a poster and had her worst episode in years, destroying furniture, screaming his name, terrifying everyone. The video went viral. Mad woman attacks governor candidate's poster. But Chief Akari saw it, and unlike everyone else, he didn't see a crazy woman. He saw a witness who'd stayed silent for 23 years. A witness who might decide to speak. 3 days later, my mother was hit by a motorcycle near her house. The rider fled. Everyone called it an accident. But I found the warning note tucked into her hospital gown. Some secrets should stay buried. As I sat beside her broken body in that hospital bed, something hardened inside me. I was done being ashamed. Done hiding. Done letting evil win because it wore expensive suits and had powerful friends. My mother had spent 23 years protecting me. It was time I protected her. What happened next was messy, dangerous, and public. I contacted journalists, human rights lawyers, anti-corruption activists. I found the nurse who'd carried my brother out that night. She'd been carrying guilt for 2 decades. I tracked down hospital records that had been destroyed. I found financial transactions linking Chief Akari to the adoption. And I found Chidi. Telling him was the hardest thing I've ever done. He didn't believe me. Then he took a DNA test. When the results came back, he sat in silence for 3 hours. Then he said, "I want to meet her, our mother." The case went to court. The media frenzy was massive. Chief Akari's lawyers called my mother delusional, me opportunistic, the whole thing a political hit job, until my mother took the stand. She walked into that courtroom, head high, voice steady, and testified for 6 hours. Every detail, every date, every name. The mad woman was gone. In her place was Nkiru Okafor, intelligent, articulate, devastating. The jury saw the truth. The judge saw the truth. Nigeria saw the truth. Chief Akari was convicted of child trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted murder. He's serving 25 years. Today, my mother still has nightmares. She flinches at loud sounds. Some scars don't fully heal, but she's free. Chidi calls her mama now, though it's complicated. He loves the parents who raised him, but he's building a relationship with the mother who never stopped fighting for him. As for me, I carry a different kind of scar, the shame of all those years I hated her. All those times I was embarrassed by the woman who was literally sacrificing her sanity to keep me safe. I can't get those years back. I can't undo the cruelty of my silence. But I can tell her story. I can make sure the world knows, my mother was never crazy. She was the sanest person in a world gone mad with greed and violence. And she loved us enough to let everyone believe she was broken, so we could stay whole. That's not madness. That's heroism.